Welcome back to the Mastering Runeterra podcast with Jay and Bay, the #1 source for competitive Legends of Runeterra news and information. If you're looking for the best decks to play right now, be sure to check us out on Twitter at Master Runeterra or in our Discord. And if you want to take the next step in leveling up your game, check out our Runeterra team on Patreon, where we do weekly learning calls and one-on-one coaching. Now strap in and grab yourself some Poro snacks, because we are about to start Mastering Runeterra.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Mastering Runeterra podcast with Jay and Bay. We have a great show for you today. We're going to go over some tournament lineups. If you want to go aggro, if you want to control, if you want to beat those two, we're going to go over different deck choices, things we would and would not do. Bay, what are you up to? Anything fun this weekend? Gonna play some hockey or some volleyball, maybe?
Actually, no. I'm not playing hockey and I'm not playing volleyball because I'm going to be busy with something else. I'm going to be co-casting the Mastering Runeterra $1,000 tournament. Pretty exciting stuff happening tomorrow and Sunday. 2-day tournament.
Sounds very exciting.
Did I mention $1,000 a prize pool?
Oh,
I feel like I forgot to
I bet you have very attractive and witty co-hosts as well.
I do.
Like, no, as a matter of fact, I don't.
yeah, sorry, Don. We couldn't find one, so I just hired this guy.
Okay, shenanigans aside, I do want to give a shout out to our sister podcast over at Rune Terrible. If you want more great Runeterra content, go check them out. Saucy and Levins are absolutely hilarious. Love listening to their podcast every week. Mm-hmm. So good. Okay, with that said, let's jump into some tournament action. Man, I gotta say, I love tournaments. This is why we're putting ours on as well. Like we both just love them, and like I'm excited to be here. I'm a little sad almost that I don't get to play in my own tournament, but it's gonna be fun to have a bird's eye view of all of these great players, you know, bringing their A game. I plan on learning a lot. So, Bay, if you were going to be playing in the tournament, which of course you cannot, I saw you trying to, you know, get it in on your phone while you were casting the practice casts. I saw you trying to play on your phone. It's not happening. It's not happening. Ajin Bay ×2 wins tournament.
I wish I could play. Yeah, it's just like it's something else, Bay. It's my like Smurf name. I do wish I could play though. I love these tournaments.
Yeah. Okay. So if you were playing though, what would you be bringing and why?
Okay. So this is a big open field. Again, not like 1,000 players like seasonals, but we're expecting a good amount of people. And you never really know what people are going to bring in these open tournaments, especially when the like ranking range is going to be so diverse. You know, it's not just like the top cut of masters, right? You're going to get people from all ranks here. So you're not really sure what your opponents are going to bring. So I want to pick, it sounds like we're beating a dead horse here. I want to pick a very balanced lineup that has the strongest decks in it and no glaring weaknesses that doesn't immediately lose to aggro. That's what I want to bring.
Okay, so that sounds great though. You know, you're like, I just want to play the good decks with not super bad, like holes in their game, big weaknesses. But for those listeners that perhaps don't play Runeterra all day, every day, first off, what are you doing? That's obviously the best thing you could be doing. What else would you do? I don't even know what else I would do.
Work?
I'm playing Runeterra right now while we're recording this podcast. So, what are those decks then?
If I had to pick the strongest decks, like the strongest all-around decks in the meta right now, are probably Thresh Nasus, TLC, Trundles Under Control, and ASOL decks. There's a strong consideration to put discard aggro in that like category of very, very strong deck, but it doesn't quite fit with the rest of the lineup as it's a more aggressive deck. And if your opponent's good into aggressive decks, they just let it go and they crush you. And if they're bad into aggressive decks, they just ban your one aggressive deck. And so it leaves like a weird hole in your lineup that I don't really like. So I would focus on, if I were to go to the tournament, I would probably play, if I had no preferences, really, I would probably bring Thresh Nasus, Trundle Lissandra, and an ASOL deck, be it Zoe ASOL, Leon ASOL. You could also consider Zoe Lee in that ASOL slot, or probably for Thresh Nasus, but you have to be very good on the deck to want to make that switch. Like the Acel decks, I feel like are a lot more forgiving. You don't have to play it at such a tight margin, and the Lee decks are a little more polarizing. You have some very good matchups, but you're a lot more soft to aggro.
Yeah, right. And to touch on that, playing discard aggro as your third deck, I made that choice at seasonals, and it really cost me. I think I played like Zoe Lee and one other kind of mid rangey deck, and then the discard aggro. Oh, it was TF of course.
Yeah.
And then I just ran into a triple anti aggro lineup, beat them with TF Fizz because obviously, and then just got destroyed 2 games in a row playing discard aggro. And so it really like brought to the forefront of why people play these lineups that are kind of like 3 of the same sort of decks that have the same sort of matchup lineup where you can, ban one thing that makes sense, then won't be super weak. Though that being said, if I had ran triple aggro, I just kind of like got a bad pairing as well.
It happens,
right?
What are you gonna do?
And so speaking of triple aggro, so I mean, first off, I think your lineup is great. Those are 3 just very solid, well-rounded decks, and we've been preaching that for a while now, that if you're going to a wide open field, the best favor you can do for yourself is to just have like a dog in the game, as they say, like have like a chance to be against everything and not be like me, where you're just kind of like out to lunch against certain lineups. So what if someone does want to play discard aggro though? Because it is a very powerful deck. It's been doing very good on the ladder.
Yeah. Steals a lot of wins. Very strong.
Yeah. I've lost to it many times. How do you construct a lineup, or can you even, with discard aggro?
You totally can. So if you're really wanting to capitalize on the strength of discard aggro, you should be looking for a triple aggro lineup, something like discard aggro, nightfall aggro, and then spiders. You'll notice these decks all have a glaring weakness to the card Avalanche. I call this aggro lineup the ban TLC lineup because if you see a Freljord Shadow Isles deck, you have to ban it. You cannot beat it, but it gives you a clear plan. Ban Trundle's under control, beat everything else, because these decks I feel like are only really held in check by their bad matchup against Trundle Lissandra. If it wasn't for that, I think they would just absolutely be running over the ladder, and they're still performing very well on the ladder. But without that like checks and balances that the TLC deck gives them, I think they would just be absolutely running rampant. Discard aggro would crush everything.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's like a good note there about the differences between the ladder and a tournament play. Like, for instance, from last seasonal, TFIz was just like the nightmare deck, but you played a lineup that was just always going to ban TFIz in decks that would not have been good into TFIz, but wasn't a problem, was good into basically everything else and just banning TFIz. And so here we have like a similar sort of situation with decks that are running over a lot of things that are not TLC, and you can just ban TLC, and then they need to have 2 other decks that are also going to try and be good against aggro while fighting off, the various other decks in the format, which is a tall order. It's just tough to ask of someone's lineup.
Definitely. This is why I recommend building a lineup that all your decks, or at least 2 of them, are not soft to aggro. In our previous example, TLC, Thresh Nasus, and an Acel deck. Thresh Nasus and Acel neither of them are soft to aggro. I wouldn't put them worse than 45-50%, right? They might even be favored in some of the matchups. And you have to assume going into it, you can't say, okay, Trundle Lissandra covers my aggro matchups, we're good. That's getting banned. Your opponents aren't stupid. Well, hopefully they are. But if they're not, they're going to ban your TLC if they're playing a triple aggro lineup, and then you're stuck with whatever else you brought. And if you brought Zoe Lee and, I don't know, like Ash Noxus, you're just going to get ran over. So you need to have a cohesive plan and take into account what your opponent is going to ban as well.
Yeah, so very good points there. You mentioned Ash Noxus. This is a really interesting deck to me because I feel like I hear things from both sides of sort of the coin here, where people either really love this deck, well, like, man, this is like, why aren't you playing this deck? It's great. To the other side, we're like, this deck is like no good, like it struggles against like discard aggro and stuff. where does Ash Noxus and these kind of like there's a few other decks that are sort of like Soraka Tom Kent just kind of in this camp where like they're considered kind of like tournament decks.
Yeah, probably like deep as well.
Yeah. So
like meta decks,
Yeah. So how do these fit into the picture?
So these decks are decks that crush some matchups and absolutely get crushed by other matchups. By the way, the Ash Noxus deck we're talking about is the newer version with LeBlanc Ash with Legion Marauders and the 8 mana slow spell that summons 2 Legion Marauders. It's very strong. It's very good. It absolutely destroys a lot of the meta decks. It crushes Zoe Lee. It destroys Thresh Nasus for the most part. Like it's very good into a lot of these more popular decks. But if you queue into discard aggro, you might as well just go next. Like it's really hard to beat the aggro decks because you have no toughness. You can't block profitably, and they're so much faster than you, and you have no life gain. So these decks, you're making a meta call. You're going, I think enough of my opponents are going to bring Thresh Nasus and Lee that I'm going to play these decks that crush Thresh Nasus and Lee, right? So you bring Soraka Kench, you bring Ash Noxus. Deep's a little bit different. Like Deep beats a lot of decks, destroys Trundle Lysandra, but cannot win against Lee Sin. So these decks, while they can be very, very powerful, I feel like it takes a lot of the agency out of my hands. Yes, I can play the deck to like a very high level if I practice it a lot and everything, and that could give me some percentage points and everything. But if I just roll, like if I play Tom Kench and Ash Noxus and some third deck and roll into triple aggro, I might just be dead out the gate, and there's nothing I can do about it. And I don't like that. Some people really do. Some people like to try to high roll their matchups and win that way, and that's totally a viable way of doing it. I just prefer to not like depend on luck of the draw, as it were, as much as possible. And so I try to steer away from these decks and these lineups. They do have a time and a place for sure.
Yeah, I think you nailed it when you call them kind of metagame decks, because they do have those specific matchups that they're able to target and kind of prey on. The problem being that in a 1,000-person tournament, like there's just not enough of those decks typically for you to have, you'd have to get quite lucky because they're maybe like 10% of the field, and to get paired against them, 7 or 8 times out of 9 would be would be insanely lucky.
I think in a smaller field, the stock of these meta decks go way up. Top 32 of seasonals, for example, you can more or less guess what your opponents are going to be on, and they're going to bring the strongest decks. They're not going to bring like random decks for the most part. So you can bet on more of your opponents bringing Trundle Lysandra, Thresh Nasus, discard aggro, whatever. Whereas in the open, let's say the most popular deck is Trundle Lysandra, it might be played by 25% of people, probably not even then, because you just never know what people are going to bring in these wide open tournaments.
Yeah, we see that all the time in Magic, where a metagame will start to sort of like eat itself, we say. So things like, if everyone's bringing TLC, okay, now you start teching your TLC deck to be like more and more and better in the mirror, and then like aggro becomes better, and you get to see these like crazy levels. And I've always liked the open tournaments. I like having like 1,000 people because I want to play, right? I want to compete. I hate it when it's like, oh, there's only 32 like special invites, and most of us just have to watch. I'm like, oh, that's not cool. I like it inclusive. But I will say that watching people metagame and get to play these other decks like the Soraka Tom Kenches, or the Ash decks, that's kind of fun too. It's kind of fun to see them have like their time. So that's like a good reason to have some smaller field tournaments that I never really thought about before. I was always like, no, always have it big, always include everyone. I'm like, maybe
there are benefits.
Yeah, there are some upsides. It makes for a much more interesting viewing experience when you can throw those other decks around stuff and just to see what people bring, because people get real creative.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, people bring some interesting stuff, and that's really fun. Speaking of interesting stuff, another lineup that we were discussing earlier. This is the anti-TLC lineup. The aggro one is the banned TLC lineup. Again, TLC is Trundle Lysandra control. I know somebody will ask. This is the anti-TLC lineup. This is I am here to beat to beat TLC, it's the triple rally lineup with Scouts, the MF Quinn version, Sand Scouts, the Lucian Azir version, and then the Shen J4 deck. The Combat Trick plus Rally decks tend to have a really good time against TLC because their avalanches aren't as good and stuff like that. You have Stony in Scouts. You have the Sand Scouts, which are not vulnerable to slow speed removal at all in the Sand Scouts deck, and then you have Combat Tricks and tougher creatures in your Shen Demacia deck, your Shen J4 deck, and that combined with rallies can just end the game before it really gets off the ground against TLC.
Yeah, I've played this lineup a little bit. I actually played against Z Turtle, one of our testing partners last weekend, and he absolutely destroyed me with this lineup, just like locking me out of the game with the Stonies. And the J4 Shen deck was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I beat it a bunch on the ladder, but yeah, it's got some power to it for sure. I like that they buffed J4. I like seeing him get a chance to see some play.
He was pretty unplayably bad before.
Yeah, it's nice when they do that. Even Lulu got a bit of a buff and has seen some play, so I love when they do that stuff.
Okay.
I was going to say, so these are the lineups that we think are kind of like sort of premier. But going into something like seasonals, there are going to be just like the most played lineup, if it's triple aggro or whatever, it's still going to be like a small fraction of of the percentage of the
take
tournament.
A percentage in your head and like divide it by 3. That's that's what it is. And so that's why we don't put these lineups are very powerful. Like the targeting Trundle Lissandra lineup is very, very powerful. But if that's all it does, which is not the case, it's still 3 strong decks. But even if you think Trundle Lissandra is going to be the most played deck in the open, like I said, maybe 20% of people bring it. Fizz TF had like 20%, 25% of people bring it in seasonals last seasonal. And it was what?
Wild. It's wild that's only 20%.
Yeah, and it was like insane. It was like clearly far and away the best thing you could be doing. So don't plan on a bunch of people bringing like the meta decks because it's not going to happen. You will see them, just not as often as you think. So these decks that target, I don't really want to be playing in these wide open fields, and we're just going to keep reiterating that over and over again. You're free to do it. It's just not where I want to be.
Yeah, so it brings up another good point that we've been doing a lot of scrimming in our Discord with our Patreon team. But it makes me realize that we might start getting a little bit of like inbred kind of results where like we're playing a lot of those 3 kind of lineups, things that are similar to those, when really we're going to be thrown up against all kinds of brews and decks and stuff like you didn't even know existed. Do you think then? I mean, obviously playing in tournaments like our $1,000 tournament coming up this weekend is a great way to do it because there's people are going to be bringing these lineups there. That's probably like the best way. But, there's only tournaments on weekends really. And we have like a whole another week leading up. So do you think getting some ladder reps in as well, just to try to, get reps in against all these different decks that are out there?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I get most of my prep on ladder. I do a lot of ladder playing. And then once I want to have a feel for where all the decks of the meta are at, what's good against what. And then once I kind of have that like wide general knowledge, I scrim. And what I'm looking for scrimming is to find out specific matchups, specific scenarios, how these things work out, specific cards, things like that. And that's where I'm looking for the deep knowledge, right? I want a wide, shallow knowledge of everything that's going on in the format. I want to know about how good everything is against everything else. Nothing too crazy. But then when it's time for me to really hone in my lineup and figure out where I need to be, what I need to ban, what cards I need to play, that's where I turn to scrimming. I look for what's really important in the Lissandra mirror. Do I need to ban this if this is going to be my lineup? Things like that. And that's where I want that like deeper knowledge. And it's tough to get that on ladder because you only play the matchup you want like once every 10 games maybe.
Yeah.
So you turn to your scrim partner and say, okay, here, I want to do this. I want you to mulligan aggressively for this card because I want to know how this matchup works out if you have this card on 2, right? And I don't have this card on 2 or whatever. So that's where scrimming comes in handy. And a lot of very successful tournament players don't even like ladder. Like, what am I? He's been crushing tournaments left and right, and he hates ladder. He
Yeah.
only plays ladder when he has to. He just scrims all day. So there's nothing wrong with either approach. It's just more a preference thing.
Yeah, for sure. Very good points there. One thing that we haven't talked about too much, so I want to kind of dive into a bit, is the banning. Like actually banning one of your opponent's decks. Because it's often not so clear cut. It's a little bit easier if you're playing like, one of these triple aggro decks. It's like, okay, TLC's first. But then, if your opponent's just playing three sort of like, I don't know, random decks that you haven't really seen before, three things that they just kind of brewed up. Or some combination of the two, how do you go about figuring out what to ban on your opponent's deck? Because there's also sometimes where you'll have two decks that like okay, I know that for my deck A they're like this is a good matchup and that's a bad matchup, and then for my deck B it's like the reverse. And I'm like, oh man, okay, so like, what do I do? And then I have to try and think about like, what are they going to ban on my side? And like becomes like a bit of a leveling game. So talk me through a little bit about like how you go about figuring out what to ban on your opponent's side. Like, what are the things that you're thinking? What are the things that you take into consideration?
Yeah, so my first thought is immediately is my must ban here. And so going into the tournament right now, like with most of the lineups we talked about besides the anti-TLC lineup, my first ban is probably going to be Trundle Lysandra. I think it's the strongest deck. I really don't want to play against it. Like, it has a good matchup versus a lot of what I'm bringing. I just want to get it out of there. But let's say our opponent isn't bringing that, or they have some weird deck. They brought Teemo Ezreal, something like that. Then I need to know. This is where the ladder knowledge comes in. I played against a lot of things with a lot of decks, so I have a general idea of how the matchups go down, and that's pretty necessary. I feel like for exactly this scenario. So I know, okay, this matchup sucks, but this one's pretty good, and this one's pretty good. So what happened? Like, what is my opponent looking to ban? And you're gonna get this wrong because it happens. Sometimes I think your opponent bans the wrong thing, like in my opinion, but a lot of times they just don't ban what you expect. Maybe they know the matchup's better than you. Um, and so I go, okay, I think my opponent's going to ban this. And if they ban this, then I no longer need to worry about this deck. So I don't have to ban that anymore. So I'm going to ban this one instead. Sometimes it's pretty obvious what your opponent should ban, but sometimes it's not. So like, I I wish I had like a cheat code for you, right? I could just say, oh,
It's
just do
hard.
this, right?
It's really hard.
But it's hard and it's a skill, and
It's
it
a skill
depends on
that,
who your opponent is, and it's something that you need to be practicing. Uh, a great way to practice in non-tournaments, if you don't have the time, or if there's just not enough tournaments leading up to seasonal, is Gauntlet. Practicing Gauntlet.
right?
You get to see a lot of different opponents in a very quick time frame, right? And you can do that every single week. But the only real experience you can get for this is to play in tournaments.
Yeah. Are you, when you're scrimming, are you ever experimenting with your bans? Like you're saying, I always want to ban TLC, but like depending on what the other two decks are that your opponent's bringing, maybe one's like, I don't know, maybe Lee Sin Zoe's also bad, and they have like a third deck. Are you ever trying like, what if I maybe take out that Lee Sin Zoe, just see what happens if I play mirrors in TLC, or like see how it goes?
Yeah, all the time. I do that a lot, and usually when I scrim, like, we have an idea. We go, okay, I ban this and I ban this. Okay, yeah. But then like a lot of times we'll go, okay, but what if like instead you ban this and we have to play this matchup? Can we play this a couple times? And it's not, when I scrim, it's not just like, I don't play just best of 3. I usually go, okay, I ban this and you'd ban this. Let's play this exact matchup 5 times. Like this.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the first deck I would pick would be Nasus Thresh, and you would play Ezreal Draven. All right, well, let's play that matchup 5 times. Okay, that feels pretty good for me and pretty bad for you. So what if instead you ban this and then I bring this deck to the first part? Okay, well, that's pretty good for you. So maybe we consider that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I go, oh, damn, if you ban Thresh Nasus instead of this, your Ezreal Draven's kind of taking over. Maybe I need to consider banning that. Let's play the other matchups. Like this is how scrimming works for me. It's not just jam best of 3 over and over and over and over again. You want to be thinking critically about it. And I think I say thinking critically 6 times an episode, but I'm going to keep saying it. So suck it up.
Yeah.
Think critically. Don't just jam games. It's not helpful.
Yeah.
Practice does not make perfect. perfect practice makes perfect. You need to come into your practicing, your scrimming with a plan, and you need to stick to that. If you just jam games and go, oh, I won 6 games and only lost 3, so hot damn, I guess I'm ready to win seasonals. Like, that's not how it works. You need to be figuring out what matchups are going to against what priority bands you need to have, your mulligans. Talk to your scrim partners during the game. Go, okay, I'm considering mulliganing this, and this because of this. What are you looking for in this matchup? How do you go about your mulligans? And maybe they go, well, I actually think this is really important in this matchup, so I'm going to mulligan this. And then maybe you go, oh, okay, if you think that's so important in the matchup, then I need to mulligan for a way to deal with it, right? If you think quick early aggression is so important in this matchup, then I need to mulligan for something that stops that quick early aggression. And this is how you really get that in-depth knowledge of your matchups. And you don't get that if I just say, hey, yo, Jason, let's jam 6 games. And then afterwards I say, haha, you lose, sucker. Like, like,
stop saying that to me. It hurts. Words hurt. Yeah.
If we do that, neither of us learn anything.
It's so true. Yeah. And we harken on this because this is what a lot of people do, and why they sort of run into issues. And so we're trying to preempt that for anyone that's going down this path. And I think you did a really good job there of sort of giving a somewhat kind of like a sneak peek or a view of what it's like to try to be a professional Runeterra player or like card game player. You got to put in time and work. It is a lot of work. And as the scene becomes more and more competitive, the amount of work you have to put in to have success becomes greater and greater. You'll see that in just any sport, esport, card game, what have you, especially as more like prize money comes into it. People are incentivized to work harder. That mountain will keep, getting taller. Speaking of which, we've got our tournament this weekend, and then it's the last week before seasonals. I really want to do well at seasonals. I don't always get to put as much time as I like to into preparing. Just, we have so much going on. Streaming, making videos, making the podcast,
all this stuff,
all the Patreon stuff that we do. So this coming week, my plan is to basically try to push as much off my plate as I can, and just to be like, scrimming and learning, and like I want to have my decks locked in on Monday after the tournament. I want to, I'll have a pretty good idea. I already have a pretty good idea of what I want to run close to it, but definitely seeing the new stuff people are bringing, what's working, what's not working. The meta might shift a little bit also because of the results from this weekend. So take all that into account. Try to get my lineup more or less set on Monday, and then just play games non-freaking stop for this entire week on ladder, scrimming in the Discord and whatnot. That's my plan. And now that I say it out loud, it doesn't sound like the most amazing of plans. So I'm interested to get your thoughts. Like, what does your last week look like? Because I know from Magic experience, the closer the time is to the event, the more valuable it is. Anything like we've seen this very accurately in Runeterra, where about a week ago we were saying TLC was like unplayable and just like a really bad deck, and then like a day or two after that, we're like, oh, is TLC just the best deck now? And
then we were off Nasus Thresh. Not big on that deck at all. And then the list got refined, and now it's a powerful machine that has great matchups against across the board. But yeah, these things change, and I think that's actually a great point. The prepping you did 3 weeks out is not as valuable as the prepping you do 3 days before. The meta is going to change, and sometimes it changes overnight. I have been in situations on the Magic ladder, on the Runeterra ladder, especially the higher up in Masters or Mythic, respectively. The higher up you are, the faster these things change. And I've been in points where I've been playing the best deck or whatever, and then in 6 hours, that deck's not good anymore. People have adapted. It changed. And now tournaments are a little different, but that's just an example of how fast these things can change. And that's why your time closer to seasonals is more valuable. And that's why we recommend the weeks coming up to it, don't like settle in stone your lineup I like to, at this point, like right now, I have 5 decks, like about 5 decks I'm thinking of. I have two decks that I'm like pretty high on, 2 decks that I'm thinking about for the third slot, and one kind of like in the back of my mind, right? That's where I'm at. And then over the course of this next week, I'm going to be testing those decks practically exclusively, unless something wild happens that I'm not prepared for. That's what I'm going to be testing. I'm going to try to get the deep knowledge of these decks, and really figure out the ins and outs. That way, I could spend a whole week practicing just these strategies, have my lineup real set, down tight. As soon as seasonal starts, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, and it easily could change drastically. We could see on Sunday, first, second place, could be a couple lineups that are just crushing what we like right now. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, I have to really consider some things. Because people are going to be copying those lists, right? People are going to bring in that for sure.
Oh, yeah. Big tournament the weekend before, people are going to copy the lineup straight up.
Yeah, so things could get turned on their heads. It's gonna be exciting. I can't wait to see. You want to do some predictions? Should we do a little? Actually, sorry. Yeah, before we do predictions though, what would you add? Anything else for like preparing for this week? Is there anything else that you're doing? Are you watching any VODs? Are you watching any big streamers? Anything else that you're doing other than like playing a bunch of games?
I'm flipping around the streamers, seeing what the competitive streamers, right? Flipping around, seeing what other people are liking, seeing what other people are playing. I'm talking a lot with our testing group and our Patreon tournament team, just getting people's opinions, what they think, because I don't play deep, right? But this guy over here has 600 games on deep, so I'm just gonna ask him and be like, "Yo, Tim Deep, whatever, right?
Timmy Deep.
Timmy Deep. How do you feel about this matchup? How do you feel about Deep going into a big field? Yada, 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 yada. Like, what do I need to know? And that saves me so much time. So it really hammers home how important it is to have like a team, or not like a team per se, but a community. People you can go to. You're delegating these tasks. You can't do it all. It's just not possible. So we're going to be talking to other people, getting their opinions. I will be watching the tournament very closely. Obviously, we're going to be casting it. And I will, after the tournament, I will be asking the people who participated, who weren't in the feature matches, their experiences as well. Because this is it. This is the last tournament before seasonals. If anything big breakout happens, it's gonna happen tomorrow and Sunday. Things can change on ladder and that will shake things up. But like the majority of our information is going to be from this weekend. So we really have to be watching it closely.
Yeah. And also to note on that, we're probably going to be doing these every weekend before seasonals. People have been asking us. So, be ready for the next one. If for some reason you can't make this one, they're coming. I think one of the things we're trying to do a lot of is like give what we want to see, to have. Like I wish there was a big tournament like every month, but like definitely before seasonals, having a big tournament, having bigger prize pools, having like these big community tournaments. And so we're putting one on. Same with like you say, you need a testing group to be successful, or well, it sure helps anyways.
So we made one.
Yeah. Come join us. So okay, let's do some predictions then.
All right, let's see what you got.
So, okay, so for what are we gonna do? A full lineup? Should we do a full lineup prediction
of the winning lineup?
Yeah.
No. Tell me the one deck that's in the winning lineup, or at least the winners or runner up. One deck. What's in it?
Okay, so I mean TLC is the easiest call here because we think TLC is the best. We think TLC is really good, but looking back at the last tournaments, did one of I play TLC in his lineup? He did. Yes, I'm playing his TLC list. That's how I know. Okay, well, it's got to be TLC then. TLC's got to be the pick, but I'm going to give a non-TLC one as well. Just to be, a little bit more. Oh, you know what? Okay, you go yours. I'm going to think of my non-TLC one.
Okay. Sleeper deck that's going to do better than we expected. Zoe Diana, I think, is going to do well. I think the majority of people who play Zoe Diana are strong players. Can you hear my dog barking?
A little bit. Okay.
So yeah, Zoe Diana, I think is going to do better than expected. I think the majority of people who are playing Zoe Diana right now have had a lot of experience with the Targon pile type decks. You see the deck championed by What Am I, who's had extensive experience on it. I think the deck's going to do pretty good. We don't talk about it much. It's not a ladder deck. You don't ever see it on ladder, but it does put up some pretty decent tournament results. So I think that deck's going to do pretty well.
Okay, my sleeper pick is the Ash LeBlanc Marauders list.
The Marauders.
Yeah,
it will do well probably.
It's been tearing up the ladder a little bit. Even like decks that I've played against it that are like should be a pretty good matchup, they still just got me sometimes. They just like go off Marauders to get too big. So yeah, and I've seen some of the top Masters players have been playing it too. So that like makes me think like, you know, they might bring it might be in some good hands. I hope we get to see it in action this weekend. That'd be a fun one. Weekend.
Yeah, that'd be pretty exciting. Deck I think is not going to do super well. Spiders. I think Spiders is pretty bad. Now, the problem is that I don't know what to replace the aggro lineup. Like, I don't know what to replace it with in the aggro lineup because it fits the mold very well. But I feel like it's the weakest link in that lineup. It just doesn't seem great. That's my opinion.
I'm not super high on Spiders. I played a lot of Nightfall aggro, and I like the deck a lot, but I think it's not well positioned at the moment. Maybe in part being because Spiders is not really seeing a whole lot at the moment, not doing really well, and that's a very good matchup for Nightfall aggro.
Sure. Nightfall's tough into TLC, obviously.
Also,
but you do get to ban it in tournament, which I think raises the stock of the deck quite a lot.
That's fair. Yeah, we should get with those bans, hey? That's one thing that, like, you know, if you have a deck that's bad against like the best deck, but good against everything else, like that's a good tournament deck.
It's a really good tournament deck. Yeah. Really good tournament deck. All right. Who's gonna do really well? Who you got your eye on?
I gotta go with What Am I? I mean, he's been crushing. He just won a major tournament. He seems like you know, this meta seems to really agree with him. You know, because it is quite open and it does reward, you know, bringing maybe some rogue decks. That's something that we also need to talk about is the strength of going rogue. We touched on a little bit about what you're supposed to do to ban, you know, an opponent's deck if you've like haven't really seen them or anything. But yeah, so What Am I is, you know, he's a good deck builder. He's a great player. He just came off a big tournament win. He's got to be my choice for pick to do well. Who do you have your eye on?
Certainly not my brother, who will be there.
Nice.
He is
shout out
2, I believe. Yeah, shout out Broku Black is his in-game name. So if you see him, please go easy on him. He will be there. What Am I would probably also be my pick, but Nick Mix Plays is up to 1,000 LP on ladder.
Killing it.
Kind of crushing it. Also, What Am I is going to be in Fight Night with me tonight with Kever and I. So that will be exciting. But Nick Makes Plays. He's been kind of destroying ladder, and so I would really like to see him translate that into a nice tournament finish this weekend.
Nice. Yeah, me as well. Let's talk a little bit about going rogue. So, especially in a meta game like this. So I guess we should define what we're talking about going rogue. Playing decks that are not like part of the meta game. The decks that are, you typically don't see on ladder. A good example might be What Am I had Gangplank.
It was Go Hard. It was at least Twisted Fate, Gangplank, Go Hard. Yeah.
Right.
With 2 copies of Dreadway.
Yeah, with all 3 champions, 2/2/2. And then the Dreadway with the combo with the Ledros. So definitely not something I had seen on the ladder at all before that point. So this would be what we call like a rogue deck, something that's like, just outside of the norm. And I gotta say that you're gonna see this quite a bit in tournaments, because people are able to bring these decks and like ban things that would normally knock them down on the ladder. And it can be very difficult when you've just never played a matchup and you don't know what your opponent's doing, how their deck works quite well, how your lineup is going to stack up against their decks. It makes life really hard for you. And on the flip side, if you are the one bringing the rogue decks, you typically know your matchups against the normal meta decks, so you're good to go. You know what to ban. You know which matchups are good or bad. You know how to play the matchups.
You know how to play it.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Where's the trade-off between playing something like TLC or Lee Sin, Zoe, these decks that are established, very powerful, but are also known quantities, compared to playing something like this Go Hard list or something even more rogue that people just don't know at all? Where's the trade-off there? I know that you are typically more of the play the deck that is that's maybe not well established, but that's just powerful across the board. Can you not find rogue decks that are doing this? Like, they must be out there.
They are out there. I see a lot of come on, camera, listen to me. I see a lot of the PNZ. There we go. The PNZ Targon decks are actually doing pretty well. Things like Zoe Victor. They do quite well, but they're not seen super often. So I don't know how my matchups work there. I kind of do, right? But not super well. And so you, as the rogue player, gain that uncertainty in your opponent. They don't know what to ban. They don't know how to mulligan. They don't know how this matchup plays out. You, on the other hand, do. You probably played this matchup 100 times. But you are probably trading off in raw power. The meta decks are meta decks for a reason. TLC isn't one of the most popular decks because it's cool and Lissandra's got a sick level up. It's the most popular deck because it's very powerful. And so if you make too large of a trade-off in power, those points you gain from your opponent not knowing how it works, you're not making it up. So there's a sweet spot, I feel like. And I wouldn't just go rogue just to go rogue, right? I wouldn't just play an off meta deck just to ha, gotcha, if I didn't have a ton of experience on these strategies. I don't think that's worth it. But if you've been playing something for a long time that's not quite meta, by all means bring it. It can be it can work in your favor.
Yeah, and I think in a meta like this where it's wide open. The metagame right now is wide open. Things are very balanced. You can really win with just about anything. That I think is more conducive to going rogue, because you're not going to run into a TF Fizz, a Felios, just that insane raw power that you can't overcome. There's, things are still, your decks that are a little bit rogue are still going to have a very similar kind of matchup table. Things are still going to be kind of 50-50. It's very interesting because there's a lot of design space and deck building space to play with. There's decks that just pop up on the scene. TF Fizz could have been a thing for a month, I think, before it actually hit the scene. Just nobody discovered it. Sometimes there might even be decks that never get discovered. It's certainly possible. And so, it's a bit of a brewer's paradise right now. And I think there's definitely, are you interested in trying things that are super rogue? You've won your 10th seasonals and okay, you know what? This time, let's get a little crazy, throw something at the wall, see what happens. If I was playing an art tournament, that might be something that I might want to try. Just going kind of rogue, because a lot of the people in our tournament, I think, are going to be, kind of tournament players. They're going to be people that are climbing up the ladder, people that are definitely masters, trying to, they're qualified for seasonals or going to try and be qualified for seasonals. And I feel that's maybe a meta that you could attack by going a little bit rogue.
You definitely could. I love the idea of going rogue. I love playing the kind of offbeat decks. My favorite deck right now is Zoe Karma. And I would bring that deck to every tournament, except it sucks.
One caveat.
One small problem is that it's bad. But I really like that deck, and I'm actually planning on testing Go Hard after this weekend. So I definitely like the idea of this, and Go Hard specifically is a deck that's pretty weak to Trundle Lysandre. Like, it's literally unwinnable, but you are very good into a lot of other things. You have a very good aggro matchup because you flood the board early. You have these ping effects. You have Withering Wail, and then you go over the top. You can beat a lot of decks. I think Shadow Isles is very strong right now. And so in an environment where you can ban your worst matchup, you can just ban Trundle Lysandre control, which you kind of want to do anyway because it's really good. That deck could be quite powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something I want to do as well. And I'm like kind of just scared to do, basically. Because there's a reason that these decks are good and they've already been flushed out. There's a lot of people working on them for a lot of time. There's a lot of iterations. Whereas if you're building something yourself, like if I was to build my own deck, all of a sudden now I'm working on it, by myself, maybe with our group. Not nearly as many reps, not nearly as refined as some of their lists, and also tough just to get enough games in against all the things that are out there to actually figure out if it's really good or not. So it's hard to do, but like, man, do I want to do it, because it is fun. It's so much fun to have your pet deck, especially like creating something unique that's your own. So jealous of What Am I? He's always got his like brews going on.
He's always got
so
cool
good.
Deck.
Yeah.
God damn it.
I got the normal decks. Best deck again, I guess so.
Here.
Oh, boring. No one wants to see my matches. So like, oh, TLC again, huh? Ooh, exciting. Wow. Oh, some the Lee Sin Zoe matchups. Oh man, I can't wait.
Wow.
Love it.
To be fair, that is something that What Am I gets to work on a lot more because of scrimming.
That's true.
We're spending a lot of time climbing the ladder, and he just isn't. And so he gets to try out maybe a little weird, little offbeat things because he doesn't have to worry about losing the LP, which is a huge, huge advantage of scrimming. For example, I'm trying to get into like the top 20 on ladder right now. I think I'm like 30 something for the possible 7-2 cut. And I cannot take the time to go hard on ladder if I don't think it can get me up to that LP range that I want to. Whereas I can scrim and say, yo, I want to run 6 games of go hard against this. Let's go. Right. And I don't have to worry about the deck possibly being bad. I can mix it up as much as I want to without any fear of like losing my standing on ladder.
Yeah, so good points there. This is why I made a secondary account that I could try stuff out on, and I just got it up to Masters last night on stream. Because before, like, it was like I started it this season at the bottom, and so I was like, bronze. I was like probably not getting the best testing in. But now I've gone up to Masters. I'm like, oh, I could actually, I could be playing against you. I could be playing against What Am I? Well, I guess not, because he's playing ladder. I could play against Nick Mix Plays, whoever. All the Masters players in NA, and like get some actual some solid testing and trying some different decks out. Shout out, by the way, if you see Baba Yaga JF, that's yours truly smurfing it around. So yeah, I feel like it's a little bit too late now, though. Sure, the tournament will shake things up a little bit. I'll try some other stuff out, but like, if I can't get something by Monday, if I don't have a deck by Monday, I really want to know what I'm playing like Monday, Tuesday at the latest, and just reps. I want all the reps in with my deck.
Experience will outweigh the benefit of playing something that maybe has a good like corner on the metagame. But if you're not very experienced with it, you're gonna lose games.
Yeah, totally. You had mentioned also the importance of being at the top of the ladder for the 7-2 cut and Masters. Why don't you explain that a little bit to people, and maybe the one that doesn't know about what this is, about the changes coming seasonals.
Yeah. For those of you who haven't heard or don't know, the previous seasonals was you had to go 5-0. It's single elimination.
It's rough.
It's not technically single elimination, but if you weren't 5-0, you were not making it into top 32, except for like maybe one person who was the top of the ladder board. So like Raptaro made it last seasonals, and he was the second place in the ladder board. But they're changing it. Yeah, it was rough. It was very stressful, and I hated it. But they're changing it now so that it's Swiss. You're playing 9 rounds of Swiss over the course of day 1. All the 8-1s and the 9-0s automatically make it, which already I think is a huge improvement. But the top 12 placed 7-2s on the ladder. So not number 1 through 12. If you're 7-2, you get in. The top 12 7-2s. So you could be we could have like a rank 1, a rank 5, rank 15, rank 20, rank 21 through 26. Like all those guys make it. So getting up into like those higher double digits, or I guess lower double digits, um, could afford you an extra loss, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this today. So, like check-in for the tournament is about an hour. And then each round is 50 minutes, but like
Like an
practically
hour
an
and 15,
hour.
I think, is usually
Yeah,
what it
so
takes to go from round to round, I feel like.
that's like 10,
Yeah.
12 hours. And
Come
like,
on, you won a Grand Prix. You can do this.
oh yeah,
That
I want
wasn't
two
even a
grand.
help.
I want 2 Grand Prix.
Easy. We're Magic
Thank
players.
you.
We got this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not a big deal, but a big change. A big change from what we were used to. That's a long day. A long day of Runeterra, which I like.
They have that
Don't get me wrong.
mental endurance.
Ooh, got the mental endurance too. Yeah, we're gonna be streaming, which makes it like extra difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be a wowzers.
Make sure you eat a lot
Yeah,
during the day, because you will forget to, and just be destroying water. Just
fuel up.
drinking a ton of water.
Yeah, so that's a big change. Another thing to keep in mind is that the time that you had for each round has been shrunk down now. And I forget what happens exactly if you run out of time. I know it's not good.
So I'll explain it because it's weird.
Okay.
So they have a chess timer, right?
Right.
They have
That's
a chess
right.
timer for each player, which is like when it's your action, your chess timer is ticking down. When that hits 0, nothing happens. But after it hits 0 for the match, your turns take less and less time. And then, so like you get less time for your turn when your chess timer hits 0. And then there's a match timer, like right here,
In the middle.
right there,
Between
in the middle.
the two.
Yeah, so it's the match timer, the chess clocks. And so once that, sorry for our audio only listeners, you didn't get to see my fantastic demonstration. Once the match timer hits 0, it's over. Match is done. And whoever has the most time on their clock, like if it's 1-1, whoever has the most time on their clock wins.
Oh, it goes by who has the most time on their clock.
Yeah, it just ends.
That's it. Even if you're like up one game, but like the match timer runs out and your opponent has more time on their clock.
If you're up one game, we will have to check that. But I know at 1-1, which is usually what's going to happen if you go to time, right? You're not on
Typically.
game 2. Typically. Then whoever has the most time wins. I was watching the coverage last season, and I think it was Fake Hero. No, maybe not Fake Hero. It was some streamer, and they were playing, and they were losing on that attack. And I was like, oh my god, there's 20 seconds on the clock. If he just like messes around with his blocks for 20 seconds before hitting OK, he just wins this match. And so he's sitting there fiddling with his blocks, and he's like, man, we're just dead every way. And he goes to surrender, and I'm like, no. And he clicks out of it, and he fiddles with his blocks some more. He's like, it just really sucks that we're like dead. And then it like goes, the timer runs out, and the max goes, and you like don't know who wins or lost until it says victory or defeat, right? And I'm like, oh my god, he won. And he's like, oh, and I guess you ran out of time. Damn, that sucks. And he goes to like vape or something, and then it goes victory, and he's like,
what?
What? Yeah, it was super cool to see.
Yeah, so that happened.
I don't think it was Fake Hero, but it was really fun to see. Yeah.
So that happened before when there was an extra like 10 minutes, I think, on the clock.
Yeah.
So that was gonna be 10 less whole minutes. That's a long time. So if you're bringing like a Karma deck or like 3 slow decks, or you're just a really slow player,
Karma, right?
Yeah, or be slow ever clicking things. Not us, definitely. Go can do it. Matt, you really got to watch that clock though. That is good. There's gonna be a lot of people timing out. It's gonna happen.
That is what I believe the rules are. I have not reread them since last seasonal, so please read them. Don't just take my word for it.
Yes.
But yeah, pay attention to the clock. Don't just like run it down. Kind of like chess, right? Like the clock is part of the game as well. Most of your matches are not going to come down to time, but it might happen, especially since people aren't used to the 10 minutes less of time.
Yeah, that's just a significant difference for sure. So something to keep in mind there. Man. And so 9 rounds of Swiss. Like that's like wrapping my mind around that. That's a long day. So like it starts at like 10, I think.
12
There's a
Pacific. I think it's like 12:30. It started the first round was 12:30 Pacific. Last season was, I believe.
and
It might be earlier this time.
Yeah, you would think that because like otherwise, if you're on the East Coast, that's starting at like 3:30. It's gonna go for like 12.
Yeah.
You're like you're going to like 1 or 3 a.m. or something. Yeah. and then like in Brazil, like Brazil's even farther out, I think, than the East Coast. I'm pretty sure they're like in another time zone part of it. So it would go like crazy long. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be a very interesting event. I'm excited to play it.
Up really quickly. So in seasonals, right? Let's say you're one of the people who can go 7-2, you're ranked 20 or something. The majority of people who go 0-2 will drop.
Right. Sure.
Right. So what if you're like X and 2? You're 0-2 or whatever, but you're ranked 20, so you can make it on X and 2, and your next 4 opponents just don't show up. Just like collect a couple wins. I don't know if that's how it would work, but like that'd be so funny.
There'll be some of that.
3 matches. It was easy.
There could definitely be some of that. Well, yet another reason that I got my butt climbing that ladder. That's
where are you at? Like, come on.
Well, I mean, I was up to like 500. I went to 500 LP. It was pretty good. I was like, I don't know, 25th or something. I dropped down. I'm like 200 LP or something now. But I didn't want to tank I didn't want to tank that little LP that I did have.
Yeah, going from like 400 to like 0 would be.
Yeah, it's easy to do. It's easy when you're losing 25 a game.
25 at a time. Yeah.
Real easy to do for sure. I mean, we were talking about Nick Makes Plays. He's at 1,000 right now, but he went from 0 to like 850.
0.
Did he go back to 0?
He was low, and then he went up to like 800, and then he went to 0, and then over the last like 2 days, he went from 0 to 1,000 LP.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So like you can as seen, you can move around a lot when you're just playing one game at a time. So there is still a decent amount of variance. So something to keep in mind. But I'm still gonna I'm going for it. I want to try and get top 50.
Go for it. Come on, go for it. Yeah. Top 50 is probably safe. I will shoot for a little higher because I'll feel a little uncomfortable if I'm sitting at 2 losses at rank 47 or something, right? I'd really like to get into like top 20.
Yeah, I feel pretty safe then.
Yeah, but I don't want to like go for top 20 and end up being at like rank 300. That would suck. Where you're like, you're probably safe at top 50, and then you just punt it away to like try to get a little higher. That would feel pretty bad.
Yeah, I think the big decider is like how confident are you feeling on the ladder? If you're like, I'm crushing right now, I'm doing great, I love my deck, love where it's at, I'll just keep climbing. Yeah, for sure. But if I'm like, okay, we hit a good run here finally, like maybe just like take a breather.
Maybe
slightly different thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just
speaking of ladder though, yeah, that's the other thing is that like I have to balance my time between scrimming and ladder climbing because there are
content
different
and streaming and YouTube and Patreon and podcast.
I love it though. Okay, as really we're wrapping up here talking about the ladder, what about for people that because we won't have another one of these, well, sometime next week. People that want to try that are still climbing to get to seasonals, or maybe are already masters, still need to qualify for seasonals, or like get a better rank. What are some of the top decks? Obviously TLC. We've harkened about TLC, it. Yeah. Great on the ladder right now. Thresh Nasus.
I think Thresh Nasus is actually the best ladder deck right now.
Really? I've been liking TLC.
It's very good, very strong. It's up there as well. Probably 1 and 2 for me, respectively. Thresh Nasus, then TLC, both totally fine. If you're pretty far behind, and you're like, damn guys, I'm like plat, but I want to make seasonals. Maybe you need to be running something a little faster. It'd be like discard aggro. Still very, very strong deck.
Yeah, Discord aggro. Nightfall's decent on the ladder. I'm a big fan of the Lulu decks, the Lulu Shen and stuff, just because
Oh, you were saying that, yeah.
yeah, just because the games are so fast. If you're Hail Marrying, if you only got so much time and you're like whatever platter below and you need to just grind games, yeah, Lulu's a good option. The games could be like to like turn 5, like 2-minute games, like bang, 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 bang. And it's, there's a lot of strategies out there or players that haven't played against it. Like the deck's decent. What are some other aggro possibilities? Like maybe like a scouts. What do you think of scouts?
Yeah, you could run a scouts or a sand scouts deck. They're still very good, and they're very good into TLC. Yeah, which you'll probably see a lot. So yeah, you can totally run those if you're trying to like gain a lot really quickly. I think it's probably best to stick with TLC or Thresh Nasus. Some people are seeing some success with Draven Ezreal.
Yeah,
but really it's up to you. Like if you're good at Draven Ezreal or something, and you're like, oh well, Bay told me to play Thresh Nasus, just play Draven Ezreal. Like play the decks you're good at, play the decks you know well.
Yeah.
Don't throw that edge away just because someone else told you to. So while I think Thresh Nasus is the best ladder deck, that doesn't mean it's the best ladder deck for you or anyone else. It means I think in a vacuum, all things being equal, you can play all the decks exactly the same. You should play Thresh Nasus. That's like my opinion. But yeah, you have to take like play style and experience into play as well.
100%. Yeah, as we always say, play what you know how to play first and what you're comfortable with. And then after that, iterate on things. Okay, well, I think that's about it for us today. We're going to wrap it up. Hopefully we see all of you this weekend, either playing in the tournament or come drop in. It's going to be streamed on Bay's Twitch channel, which is Twitch TV / Big Daddy Bay. Sorry, I mean Majin Bay. I read that wrong.
Majin Bay, LOR.
LOR.
Also, I will be streaming Fight Night probably as this goes live. So
come check that out. Do you know what you're playing? What are you playing?
Yeah, I'm playing Zoe Lee and Thresh Nasus. I tried to submit TLC and Thresh Nasus, but then I got a Discord message saying, hey, you tried to register 2 Shadow Isles decks and you can't do that in this tournament. And I was like,
oh, oops.
Oh yeah.
Regional lock. So, different format.
Oops. Mm-hmm.
It's okay. You know what? I'm excited to watch you play some Zoe Lee. Is Lee still in your mix of maybe a seasonal deck?
It's in my 5. It's in my 5. I'm not like stoked to play it. The problem is I want to ban TLC, but one of Lee's best matchups is TLC, and so that feels a little like
yeah.
But it is a good deck still. Like it's strong, good into a lot of the field, so I still like it a lot.
And do you think the fact that it's like, kind of disappeared, not really on people's radar at the moment, do you think like that plays into it at all? That like, no one's coming hunting for it, really?
No, not really. No one's like, oh, damn, screw Lee. Well, actually, a lot of people still say that. A lot of people
they still say that. People still hate.
Why? Nobody plays it. Like,
yeah.
What's your problem? But yeah, maybe people are a little less practiced against it. Although I do, giving up the mirrors kind of sucks because I felt very strong in the mirror. That's a matchup I played a ton, and so I feel a little favored. So not, we probably won't see as much Lee, and that kind of sucks. But I still like the deck a lot.
Yeah,
it's fun. It's strong. It's good.
I fear the aggro players. That's my hesitation.
I fear the aggro players. Yep, it is.
Yeah.
Yep. What are you gonna do?
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Bay. Thank you everyone for listening. See you guys next week. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Mastering Runeterra podcast with Jay and Bay. New episodes come out every Friday. If you haven't done so already, be sure to join us on Discord, check out the Patreon team, and have a look at our deck database on Twitter at Master Runeterra. Links to all of these can be found in the show notes and description.